By now you've seen that you can build pretty much anything in Flutter. The last section we saw how the Google team had actually built charts, and they're pretty amazing. All they've done really though is build some custom widgets. So that's what we're going to do in this section, is build some custom widgets. We're going to start very simple. Let's go ahead and let's expand out our lib, and let's make a new Dart file. Let's call this my widget. In my widget, we've got a little bit of work we need to do here. So let's go ahead and import the package, and we want the Flutter material. That way we have all the material design widgets that we need. And we're going to extend the stateless widget. Stateless widget just means that we're not going to hold a state within this widget. And we want to implement the build function, which is just going to return a widget. Remember, anytime you see the word build, think render. We're going to render something out to the screen. Return new container. And in our container here, we are going to, you guessed it, add in some padding. And then we're just going to make a new text. So what exactly is going on here? Well, we've got a class, it's a stateless widget, so it's not holding state. That's right, each individual widget has its own slice of the state, meaning each widget has its own little boundary in memory called state. This one, however, doesn't care about state because we're trying to keep this example very simple, but just understand that concept that each individual widget can have its own state. Now, what we're doing is we're calling the build function. I should say the build function is called automatically. And we're going to have a context in here. We're returning a container and just simply printing out hello world. So let's go ahead and go into here. Let's import the my widget. Because it's in the same directory, we don't really need to do anything special. And let's go ahead and put it in here. Hot reload, and you can see hello world. So what exactly is going on here? Let's break this down a little bit. When the application loads, we have our import, so it automatically knows we need this widget. Then we have our stateful and our state. In our state, we have going out, we're rendering. Here's the build function right here. Nothing new. However, when it gets to here, it's saying new my widget. It's then going out here and calling build, which is how it's rendering out onto the screen. If this was a stateful widget, it would have its own state, and you would have your own internal variables you would have to manage. We're going to go ahead and expand on our previous tutorial and make an actual stateful widget. First thing we want to do, though, is we want to actually import the internationalization package out of pub.dartlang. Do that, you just grab the install code. There we go. And we're going to go out here and go to our pubspec YAML. We're installing this because we want to do some date formatting, and we want to make sure it's correct. Let's get our packages git and make sure that that doesn't have any problems. There we go. Now we're going to just create a new Dart file, and let's call this clock. We can actually just use most of our live template here. And let's call this clock state. There we go, just saved ourselves a lot of typing. Let's get this guy here. And let's do this, just so we can see what's going on in the background. Now we've got our stateful widget, we've got our state for the stateful widget. We need to go ahead and flesh these out a little bit. Because this is a clock, you can kind of guess what we're going to do. We're going to actually build a clock. So let's say string value, and let's say time here. Ooh, we forgot a few imports. Let's go ahead and add those. I'm going to import the async class. Let's go ahead and import the internationalization class, or I should say package. There we go. Timer, and we're going to call this timer. We're going to add our init state, and in the init state, we're going to make a new timer here. We're going to say timer periodic, and we want a duration of 1 second. And we need a callback for this. Our callback is going to be called onTimer. Let's add our callback in there. So whenever this timer ticks in the background in memory, it's going to call this callback, and then we're going to actually just format this out. Sometimes I get a little lazy and I just say var instead of actually typing out the type. There we go. And, whoops, I don't want that. Yeah, I do actually want that. I want date format. Sorry about that. So we want our date format, and let's go ahead and do hour. Whoops. So we want hours, minutes, seconds. And let's go ahead and do string formatted. And we want the formatter format. So that's going to take the actual time and put it in the correct format based on your internationalization. And let's go ahead and set state. And we're going to set our value to the formatted value. Now that we've got all this, we've got our timer and memory, and it's going to set the state on that value right here. We need to actually go ahead and, you guessed it, put this out here. So let's say return a new text, and we're going to just render this out on the screen. There's our value, and let's make this nice and big and bold here. Style, we'll say new text style. Font size, let's call this 32.0. And flip over to our main. Now we're going to just import this clock. And add this in here. Add our clock. And as you can see, hot reloading has picked it up. And you can see the seconds are counting down, and it will flip over, if we sit here long enough, over to the minutes. And it's in the correct internationalization. That is a good example of a stateful widget. That widget has its own state, which we're not accessing from the parent. Although you can actually share stateful information between widgets, which we'll cover in the next section.